Hello, service, and hi. Thank you for tuning in, and it's great to have you with us. Even though today's video topic will be a bit more controversial, because we will talk about something that the car care scene doesn't like to discuss. Why? Because we are going to have some real talk here, because we will discuss topics that car care simply cannot solve. And that will be the topic of this video. We often deal with challenges, topics, and questions from you. Hold on. Actually, I have to say, we can now pull product recommendations, application recommendations, tips, hints, processes, and techniques out of thin air that try to solve the problem. But actually, one has to say that the underlying problem is something else, and that is the important keyword. That is the central theme of this video. In car care, there are areas where there are underlying problems that we cannot solve. And that's why searching for solutions to these problems is actually a waste of time. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this video, using a few concrete examples. Topic number one, and this is a current topic because it is spring. For many of us, it's time to change the wheels, or some of you might be getting new rims. What if I have a matte rim surface, but I still want a ceramic coating as the best possible paint protection? I want to apply it to a rim. And let's say after one season, after 2 seasons, I ask myself, wait a minute, how do I apply a new different ceramic coating now? Or I want to refresh the ceramic because I can't polish a matte rim. And that's exactly one of those examples where you have to say the underlying problem is the matte rim. We decided to buy a matte rim. We decided to apply a ceramic coating on this matte rim. And the fact is, when ceramic coatings were developed, they were designed for glossy paints. And there, you didn't have to worry about how to remove a ceramic coating before wanting to do something else, because it was known and understood that a glossy paint can simply be polished. And by doing so, you remove a ceramic coating. Back then, no one thought about, wait a minute, what if I have a matte surface that I can't polish? The underlying problem cannot be solved with car care because the underlying problem is the matte surface. And that's why we need to be aware of this when we decide to apply a ceramic coating to our matte surface, whether it's the rims or the bodywork. And it must be said very clearly, if we then get upset that a ceramic coating is not so easy to remove from a matte surface, then that is our personal problem based on our personal decisions. And we must not make that a problem of car care. Next example, I have to park under a tree at my home. And this is exactly a very common question from you, from our community. I have to park under a tree at home or at work. And now I have the problem that tree sap or honeydew constantly lands on my car. And then questions arise like, which sealant prevents? Ideally, tree sap and honeydew from landing on the car or being able to adhere. Or the question arises, I have sealant X on my car. How can I best remove the tree sap and honeydew from my car without my chosen form of sealant suffering too much? And that's exactly what brings us back out to the original point of this video. Car care is not meant to solve our personal problems. The underlying problem is that we park under the tree. What I tried here, and it was moderately successful, is that we have at our home, we have set up sun sails that somewhat prevent the stuff from landing on my car's paint, because I also have to conduct tests for you. And therefore, I have to think of something so that the sealants I have on the car are not constantly affected. But it must be said they are not completely impermeable. And a little bit still lands on the paint. The underlying problem is that I have to park under a tree. If I want to solve this problem, I need to look for a different parking situation. Because no matter what I do, no matter what type of sealant I apply to the car, it won't solve the problem. And I can think of thousands of different washing methods. I can consider what gentle tree resin tar or adhesive residue removers are available that might solve the problem. And that's where the point about compromises comes into play again. If you know and have understood that tree resin removers, tar removers, and adhesive removers fundamentally cannot be gentle chemicals, then you also know that searching for a product that solves this problem without affecting a sealant is a waste of time, and that's just another example where you have to say, in real talk, car care cannot solve our personal problems. Next example, a next problem, I think you can see it quite clearly here. Pollen or Sahara dust. Because we also get so many questions about this, like how can I remove pollen or Sahara dust from the car in the gentlest way? Or which sealant helps me so that not so much dust sticks to the car? And again, here you just have to realistically say the underlying problem is the Sahara dust that is whipped up into the air and lands on our car. The same with pollen, the same as with me here at home. The problem is that I have a dirt road as a driveway. Dust simply arises here, and that's the problem. No washing method in the world and no sealant in the world will prevent dust from landing on my car here. And that's why the question about a sealant that prevents this is just nonsense from the start. The underlying problem is different and car care cannot solve it. Next, a very, very typical example, high gloss black parts on the exterior or piano lacquer on the interior. Because the question often arises, how should I ideally clean this to avoid scratches as much as possible, or seal it to protect against scratches? And again, at the end of the day, one must say the underlying problem is not our cleaning, not our sealing, and not our care. The underlying problem is this scratch-sensitive paint. If we don't want it, we need to cancel it when ordering the car and replace it with other materials. Or we need to decide to apply a paint protection film here. And yes, this would also apply to the interior. Then we have either completely eliminated or significantly reduced the risk of scratches. But again, everything comes with compromises. Such a paint protection film comes with its own challenges. And that's why we have to clearly state at this point, the underlying problem is this scratch-sensitive paint, which looks beautiful when new, but is simply delicate. And that's why you can think of 1,000 ways to clean it as gently as possible. But at the end of the day, we have to say, no matter what we do, no matter what products, tools, processes, and techniques we use, we will not change the fundamental problem that this is a scratch-sensitive paint and will always be. And that's why the search for something that can clean, maintain, and seal this completely scratch-free is essentially a waste of time. Next, very concrete example, partial wraps. We often get questions from people who say, I have a partial wrap on the car, so we're talking about the same thing. Black film, gold film, red paint. For me, that's a partial wrap or also lettering that we have on the sides, or someone has applied a paint protection film only on the front area of the car and not on the back. And questions keep coming up, what do I do now? I have treated part of the car with a film, but not the other part. And it becomes particularly tedious when we have something like this and then ask ourselves, what do I do when polishing? Can I treat the paint the same way as the film when polishing? And the same question arises again when it comes to sealing it. And again, here one must say, these questions are incredibly difficult to answer because the underlying problem is the partial wrapping, not the film itself, because there are now solutions for that and there are solutions for the paint anyway. The partial wrapping is the problem because when it comes to polishing, one must say, yes, you can polish both surfaces, but you can generally treat paint a bit more aggressively than you should treat a film. And in particular, we also have the problem of the edges here. Especially when I polish near a sharp edge, the risk is highest that I might loosen the film there. The same issue applies to cleaners. What if I have a tree sap or tar stain in this area? On the paint, I could use an aggressive tar or tree sap remover or even an adhesive remover. With the film, I have to be very, very careful with solvent-based products. The same issue applies to sealants. You could say there are some that work for paint and there are some that are designed and developed to work for films. So what do I do if I have both? The technically correct answer would be to find a paint sealant, apply it here, find a film sealant, apply it there, and be extremely careful not to get it on The other material, the opposite material, of course, that's absolute nonsense because no one can or wants to work that precisely. So for us, it means we will have to find a compromise that works reasonably well on both surfaces. This might also mean using a ceramic sealant that is actually made for film. This means it will work well on the film and may not last as long on the paint as a ceramic made for paint would. Because in the reverse case, it must be said that some ceramic sealants have such strong solvents and cure so intensely that they are unsuitable for flexible films. So no matter what we do here, it is always a compromise because the underlying problem is our partial wrapping. And that's why we can search for solutions for as long as we want. Nothing we do and no combination of products will solve the underlying problem. Next example, mate paints and mate films, especially the unpleasant and unfortunate combination of matte and gloss on opposite body parts. And here we additionally have the challenge and problem of a partial wrapping. That means this here is film, this here is paint. And again, here it must be said there are now products that work for matte films or matte paints. But what if I have the opposite parts here? Does that mean that I have to choose a sealant that makes the matte look matte, but then possibly doesn't work quite as well on the paint here? Or do I accept that the matte film is not as matte as before after applying the sealant? But in return, I have provided the maximum protection for the paint here. And again here, it must be said, the fundamental problem is that I have a matte and glossy paint directly opposite each other on the same body part. And it is not the problem of car care, and we should not make it a problem of car care, that this exists and that we have to deal with it. But this is another very, very good example. And I believe you have now realized that the Mini here was an absolutely perfect example and a perfect demonstration object for the topic of this video, because I have here, in fact, everything one would not wish for. I have partial wraps, which I must admit I applied myself here at the front on the roof and so on. I have sensitive high gloss black parts here. They were on the car, but I also additionally applied some to the car myself. If I hadn't done that, I would have had additional chrome surfaces. And we haven't even talked about the interior yet, because here was Mini. So smart to give us an absolutely terrible material seat, especially on the seats. On the seats, I have fabric, Alcantara, and leather. 3 different materials. That one ideally should also treat and clean differently. And even there, the question always arises for me personally, and then also for you. The question is, what do I do now? Do I use a relatively strong alkaline textile cleaner to get the fabric clean, but accept that the leather might get damaged? Do I use a gentle pH neutral leather cleaner, but accept that some stains might remain on the fabrics? Or do I work with 3 to 5 different cleaners, tools, and techniques to give the seat here the attention it deserves? So as you can see, the topic of this video is very relevant right now, using the example of the Mini. But what I wanted to address is the following. There are areas in car care where we all struggle because there is no ideal solution. Everything we do involves compromises because the underlying problem cannot be solved. If we park under trees, this problem can only be solved by not parking under trees anymore. If we have problems with partial wraps, the only real solution is to remove the partial wrap from the car. If we have problems with the fact that no matter what we do, and no matter how much money we spend, how much time we take, and how carefully we work, if we create scratches on these high gloss black parts here, then there are only 2 solutions. I either apply a paint protection film here or replace the high gloss black parts with a different surface. And that's what I wanted to address in this video. And that's also the reason why I will link this video in the future for many questions, or sometimes just without comment. Because you often ask us for product recommendations, techniques, solutions, answers to questions for problems where we simply have to say we're struggling here because we have an underlying problem that car care cannot solve. And sometimes some of you become relatively rude and aggressive when we give you this answer, but it must be clearly stated, car care is not there to solve our personal problems or to solve problems that it cannot solve. We would all wish for that, but unfortunately it cannot. And that's why it's unnecessary to get angry with us or with a car care product manufacturer if, for example, they are not able to produce and provide a sealant that works just as well on a film as it does on paint. Just because we decided to have a partial wrap on our car. That was a bit of I wouldn't say a negative topic of this video, but it was a necessary real talk topic. Because sometimes you have to openly address such things when there are problems in car care that car care itself cannot solve. If the video was helpful, insightful, exciting, and interesting for you, feel free to give us a thumbs up, support the channel with a free subscription, and tune in for the next video. Cheers!